Awesome. So, welcome everyone again to our Fallen Hackathon podcast. This is second place team with Janine and Ian. So, Ian, you were the team leader. Why don't you kind of kick us off here by talking about your background and a little bit about your team?
Hi. My name is Ian Tran, and I'm originally from the Detroit area. I'm more like military connected civilian, so had family, and also found out about the hackathon because some veterans in a incubator program that I was with had invited me to join their team 2 or 3 hackathons ago now. And so what's interesting, I guess, for me was just being able to see this arc between joining a team that I had zero context about and never went into a hackathon. Last time I coded, it was HTML 4.1 was the standard, or I was using math calculators, for school to program in BASIC. So being able to just shift to a team that team got third place. The next team got first. I was just lucky to stumble in and really good skills and leadership from Brian Donald. And also then this one, got to pitch some ideas, as I was originally just expecting to help out in the back end and just join a team. But, we had a theme of veterans health, and that sort of was an area that Janine and other team members had convened around as well. So that's what brings us to here. I guess I could say a little bit more is that I prioritized mostly like project management and UX, UI dimensions during this hackathon, but my background's in environmental science, so and music, I guess, too. Yeah.
Very cool. Janine, why don't you start by talking about how you got into tech, a little bit about your background as well.
Yes, hello, Janine Flora, and I got a chance to start with tech as a kid, actually, and I had a military career that went longer than I had planned. And with that being said, the hackathon, I completed a software engineering program through a vector technology program as well. And this is my first hackathon, so I was very excited to be here. And also, my background is more of a software engineer, closer to full stack. So with the full stack, I'm more on the front end as well. And so I am just happy to have been able to be a part of a team, to be able to get another feel of how it is to work with other team members. And who knew that we would get to the place we did. And I am so glad as well, being from the Hampton Roads area here in Virginia. It's just been awesome to try to do something else different in life. And of course, being a veteran, it's a lot of veterans that are in this area that do have voices heard and not heard. So this project was very exciting to get a chance to be a part of and to see it grow and give it a platform. So.
Awesome. So let's dive into the hackathon. There were several workshops and speakers. Ian, you traveled like several hours just to find another machine. Curious, what's like one of the biggest things that you can share from the hackathon?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot to still process. I would say I think it's the arc of it's the human side of it, not so much the tech. In terms of one, connecting with the team and realizing that I had hackathon experience and everyone else was new to this hackathon. And just being able to watch other teams in the past and be able to transfer some of that knowledge, that was a big thing in terms of just one, still serving a role in terms of contributing where I can with the skills I had, but also that layer of leadership that comes with sort of project management or team lead. And then second, that whole marathon to secure a laptop that wouldn't crash with frame and everything else. Like I think it was about almost 4 hours of driving to Vital, one of the veterans who was also, I think he's on the winning team as well. And it was kind of a picturesque, very interesting arrival, I guess, as far as being able to connect with him in person and what drew us together initially was that between hackathons, he had seen that I had worked on suicide prevention and other work in various communities, and so he wanted to build on that with me. But we tried connecting, in the gaps, and there's a point where we got really close, but then both of us went through really rough stuff and just weren't at capacity to like ask for help really. And so, there's a little bit of I guess that sort of seeded the impetus for trying to really make this project happen as a team as well. Where I'm going to have Janine share her story because she had her own causes, which prompted me to say, oh, okay, I have this idea that's also related in terms of mental health and other ways to connect with people. But Janine, do you want to take on kind of your perspective?
Sure. As we were brainstorming, it was very interesting to come about to be able to talk about those hidden wounds. I got a chance to survive 2 different deployments. The last one was more challenging than the first. And when you come back home, it's a little different and you get lost with words and how we've been trained to be able to do the job. Then when we come back, that difference, as we still go forward, those hidden scars and wounds came about when we were doing the brainstorm of our project that we wanted to put together, which led to actually having our name of Thoughtful Librarians. So we would say have a place where you go find some information, even if you're looking on purpose or not on purpose, or you may know someone who is in need. And it's just still amazing to be able to have a voice for others who don't even know how to put it into layman terms, so to speak, if you would say that, to make it easier to try to get a person to find their comfort level of their self, and just to let know you're not alone, you're not on the struggle by yourself, and there is help, and we can all make it to the next level with need, and just be of need.
Very cool. So let's put a bookmark there. I transitioned out of the Marine Corps back in 2012, and it's been a wild ride ever since, to be honest. I'm curious, what's been your biggest failure when transitioning out of the military, and what did you learn from that experience?
As for me, it's just linking the pieces. There are a lot. I think of an analogy of using a puzzle. I mean, that's everything in life. There were some missing parts, and you may know that it needs to be fulfilled, and then you're like, well, how do I find this piece, or who do I contact? And my background also, Air Force, being retired, it was administration. So it was making sure from point A to point B or point A to point D, make sure all of those connections are made. And you would have some loopholes. And we get to a certain point and things change. It can be frustrating to a person to try to find out, well, I'm supposed to be in this direction or I'm supposed to go on this path. And you get lost in the shuffle. And it's like, well, how? Hello, I'm here. What do I say? Do you see me? And people want to be seen, persons want to be seen. And it gets back to those different levels of keeping that mental health in order. And then when it gets out of order, you're still looking to see where, hey, hello, I'm here. And again, this hackathon was just awesome to be able to get in place. And some of the speakers, I was excited to see who spoke. It was interesting to see them connect from a library. I thought that was really cool. So it was like, okay, this is something that we can make happen and to be accessible. Because again, if you actually go to a library, even if it's not in person or virtual, you're going to look for that information. You're going to seek the information. And 9 times out of 10, you'll find it. If not, you can ask the question and it'll lead you to where you need to.
Cool. I want to step into career stuff, but I also want to ask some more questions on Thoughtful Librarians. Ian, did you pick the name? I'm curious, how did you guys actually come up with the name for this team?
That was actually a Janine thing. She had sort of drawn the metaphor as far as how folks one of our teammates, Angenique, she would talk about, well, I'm actually very DIY when I run into trouble and if I want to solve something. And Quinn, who's Air Force veteran, he also resonated with that sentiment as far as like, yeah, typically for me, I try to solve it myself. So this idea of like, well, people don't always want to be engaged with other people, but also having some references and maybe some guidance once in a while to digest the information or work together on, what am I seeing here? Or, can we check this out together? Look into what's a good vetted resource, for example. And so Janine had made the analogy of, oh, it's like being a librarian, or like a library. And that, I picked up on that. I was like, that's actually that's a pretty good, that works. I like that. But I couldn't figure out how we'd fit it in the Slack channel as a name, because there's so many vowels and consonants. So we just chopped out all of the vowels, and that was our team name from there. But yeah, from there, I think on Pitch Day, we decided to go with Librarians Circle, and this idea of creating a circle of your own social interests, based on either connecting by common cause or personal relationship. That was kind of the core to the MVP, as well as what the real spirit of the app was kind of on trajectory for.
Very cool. So, a big part of hackathons is to gain experience and, level up your skill set and collaborate with other folks and get your gears start turning. So, and ultimately try to find like a good sort of company to work for, maybe in the future. This might be a tangent here, but Janine, do you have like a dream company that you would like to work for? Did you have a dream company while you were in the military? Yeah.
Well, my dream is still being made. Uh, to be in the position, it's still open. Google or Microsoft, and definitely I've seen a lot of Amazon opportunities. And that's like, how would I fit in there? Especially as being a veteran, I know that they're looking, and that's a benefit, even to the veteran spouses, anyone in that community as a whole, and of course, civilians as well. Lessons learned definitely from this hackathon definitely boosted my confidence level to the next level. And it's definitely just, again, having that dream, wanting to work, to have the opportunity be available and react on it. Again, being my first and with the group, I learned a lot of just remembering that we are all still people, we're all still human, and just good to have that collaboration with the patients and finding out those certain skills that they have, how they did blend together, that we were able to get the platform that's available. Again, same thing with the app that we have available that's still forming, and that will push forward as the days come along, because it took a lot of different team members to come in and being very welcome, feeling of having a safe space to be in, even to just, again, be that voice and just continue to grow and learn. It's awesome.
Yeah, I know some of these big tech companies have like a veterans arm. When you mentioned Amazon, I recently read an article where they talked about hiring like 100,000 veterans by 2024. And, I'm sure they're probably going to have like a similar goal after 2024 as well. So they're definitely making a big push to get more veterans through the door here. Ian, do you have a dream company that you would like to work for? Maybe you're at one, or if, I'm curious what the framework looks like for you when you try to come up with a dream company.
Yeah, well, I sort of tackle. I'm sort of interested in like the ethos of the work as well, and like with this app, I feel like it'd be cool. Like some of these issues are not being covered by a lot of these companies. They're sort of very specialized into ad revenue or other things. So I'd be willing to venture and say, like, it'd be cool to start a company around something like this, right? And a lot of that's where I hope maybe in as the trajectory of the hackathons progress, that people also walk away with a better template and sense of what it's like to really formulate their own enterprise, and recognize that even a lot of the lessons learned within the course of just a few days do encapsulate a lot of core, thought processes and endeavors. Plus, at least knowing that working with the veteran community, where they've already got experience as veterans, right? Like they put in time through their service. And so there's actually a little bit there to be said. I think Bunker Labs, they like to cite that veteran entrepreneurship is kind of the highest demographic of all demographics, at least post World War II. Something like close to, I'm not going to make up the statistic off the top of my head, but you can look it up because they like to tout that. But I think that's also essential in terms of recognizing how to find a little bit more resilience in the economy, in terms of, sometimes a tech company, they decide to lay off a lot of people, and, what do you do then, right? And part of it, I think, is also recognizing the network and the connections, relationships that you can cultivate among you, and how to put your best foot forward. That's all relevant still. And, you still, I'm not saying everyone needs to start their own company or should, but as far as the skills that are there and the thought process, that's very transcendent to a lot of other endeavors, whether it's applying for a job or even just innovating within a department, if you're working for the government already or something like that, right? So to me, I think that's both interesting, but also, I kind of, what I didn't maybe flesh out as much was saying, like, some of the things that motivated this app, for example, was based on things that, both Vital, me, and other people that I know really experience, right? And so if that's the case, I'm willing to see, like, how can we take this forward and make something of it that can help other people, including through employment, maybe.
Very cool.
That's an interest, at least. So, we're working on it.
Totally. Yeah, I know the tech sort of sphere. It's constantly, iterating and moving forward. I'm not sure if you guys heard of like Dolly 2, where you could just like input some text and it'll generate an AI. This AI, Dolly 2, will generate an image based on the text. Um, whatever, like cats flying to the moon, and it'll generate a really cool sort of graphical image. So it just seems like it's constantly iterating. It's starting to feel like magic. Janine, what do you think the tech world will look like in 10 years? So 2032, what's your hypothesis?
That's awesome. That is an awesome question. Uh, Especially when you go in grocery stores now, you don't see too many people that you would talk to. You can have self checkout. Even some stores, you can just go and scan the items on your phone, and by the time you get out the door, they may just check to make sure everything is there. That's the only time you may be interaction with a person, a real person, not a robot or machine. And again, even how we're meeting through the days that we're surviving forward, it's need to connect. That will be the same thing too, of making sure that we can connect voice wise, video wise, and still be miles apart. It's those different things come to mind. It's that questions you're asking. Still, it's a big question mark as well. But what I see definitely is a lot of technology things that we would do in person are definitely going to be almost obsolete, although they won't totally go away because it's a cycle that we go through, I believe.
Very interesting. Ian, do you have a take on this?
Yeah, I feel like it. When you say, what do you think the tech world will look like in 2032? I would say it's going to be, how will tech help us be in the world in 2032? Right now, like, for example, we all had to kind of sit down, plug in headphones, and stare into a camera, right, and talk for this. But, like, I was talking with Vital about like how he was thinking about how VR could frame empathy for, imagining what it's like to be an immigrant in New York, for example, just by following one person going through the streets, right? Imagine if we were just walking in different parts of the world like we are right now, but we can talk at the same time without having to be anchored to all of this equipment, right? Which in some ways, obviously cell phones and people are, oh yeah, that's great. You can do this and it's wireless or whatever. But I think there is something to be said about what are ways that we can really push things back into connecting better with each other in the real world too. Like right now, I feel like we're in a phase where things have kind of polarized a lot into, you have to check in through Microsoft Teams, or you have to, you have to be clear about the distinction between the social media world versus kind of real life and touch grass once in a while, right? And so, one of the things that I was, again, I'm going to toot the horn about this app idea is that, like, this idea of like, how can you push people back into the real world and just have a more enriched experience by being in the world, but also, can you make data collection like personally effortless, but safe and things like that, and that you can learn from or do something with, right? Or can it be more intuitive to program, even if, folks aren't thinking in terms of specific languages, right? That it's just, I can kind of facilitate, and the AI can help me build the things that I'm thinking of, even if I don't have that kind of experience with the hard coding skills. So that's what I imagine. And obviously, like, I think the other, maybe not obvious, but there are a lot of problems right now. This, like, part of our app was born from a problem, right? But I think incentive, like Bitcoin was interesting in that it started to become a generative currency, in the sense that, like, people participate by mining or whatever, and they solve something, and so they can get something out of it. But I think in the tech world, in the future, like, there are too many issues that we got to solve as far as climate change and all of these other things, right? And I think some sort of incentivization for solving those real issues and creating real value around it, tying it to, like, improving your communities or something, that's going to be a huge thing that comes together as people learn how to literally just figure out how to get along, But it's that human side, right? Like right now, we're still in this phase where the tech always, like, technology can outstrip the ethics or the humanity behind it. It's just, you build something, you don't know how it's going to change the world around you, right? But at the same time, I think that we're at this kind of tiptoeing into a sort of golden age where people are like, oh, okay, we kind of know better, because some of these things aren't looking so good right now, So I'm hoping, or I'm going to say I'm optimistic that there's going to be a lot more of that, where it's, maybe people use that cliche of, like, tech for good, but it's it's a bit more grounded in like, how does it really mend our lives and work more seamlessly in that way.
Very interesting. Janine, what's one piece of advice you'd give to veterans starting out in tech?
Believe in yourself. Once you get those skills, we go through motions so much that sometimes we forget, or we're like in a picture frame. I use that analogy at times too. It's like you go through that motion in a picture frame, and you don't really acknowledge what you do, but you do it. We've all been like on autopilot, so to speak. And then we get a chance to go pause. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that skill will work here or work there. And it's just that confidence and just knowing the resources can be overwhelming, but always be ready to receive help. That's the hardest thing that I would speak for the veteran who probably don't know how to put that into particular words. Help is there.
Yeah.
If I could build on that.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I mean, as someone who's been, like, my co-founder was a veteran as well, and I worked for a construction company that was also veteran owned, and I think, like, that translation piece is something that can be really huge, right? Where it's like often, and that's where I even mentioned earlier, right? Like, veterans already have experience, and people know that, right? Like, you've done a lot, went through all these trainings and certifications, but really finding out, like, how does, that there, it's not that different, in the sense that, like, some of those skills can be used elsewhere, right? And I think that's there's a lot that needs to be done in the civilian side as far as helping to integrate. They're returning citizens as well, right? But at the same time, don't. I guess I would just encourage folks to look out for what does that look like. What's the equivalent, and how do you translate into that outside world parlance?
Cool. Um, do you guys have any productivity hacks? I know there's so many tools out there. One of my favorites is copy.ai. You put in some general text and it'll generate like an entire blog for you if you wanted. It's pretty crazy and saves me a ton of time. But another one is like Llama Life, which is really cool. It kind of works as like the Pomodoro technique, which Barbara Oakley talked about. But Llama Life, you can like add different um, sort of tasks in your to-do list and block out time for those tasks, and you can see how it all builds up, like the length of your day, what that work day looks like with all your tasks. So you could be like, oh, I'm working only like 3 hours a day, or like, oh wow, I have a busy day, I've got a 10-hour day with all these tasks that I need to fill out or accomplish. But yeah, Janine, do you have a favorite productivity hack?
Not quite yet. I'm still learning. Because even with the project that we're working on that I got attached to, we use WordPress, and I was like, where did that come from? That was actually kind of awesome. Coding for me, I can do that more than I can even talk about. My fingers just go that muscle memory, and then I can have a mile-long program made. It's like, whoa. Do you have to debug it and find out how long? I've used in part of some of the programs, learning of reactive formic, and another part of adding called lazy. You would start adding some JavaScript in, and it'll fill in again some of the areas. Like you said, if you want to do a blog, it'll have that format in there that will save you maybe a 10 or 15 minute particular code in. But I don't quite have a favorite just yet. I'm still learning, and again, it was just amazing to learn even WordPress. Like, what? That was just, it's really awesome. Really awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, WordPress is awesome. One of my favorites is Webflow, and I find it's a lot easier to work with versus WordPress. Their tutorials are hilarious. It's definitely worth checking out. But Ian, do you have a favorite productivity hack?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is kind of mental and organizational. I mean, I use Google Docs for a lot of things, and the idea here is like, even if I'm entering something new, I'll try to take note of something I found useful and then aggregate it somewhere, so that coming into new situations, I have a toolkit. So at least from a project management standpoint, I've got like a spreadsheet that can kind of track tasks and stuff, even if we're not using a common Trello or Asana or other, PM Basecamp type software. And then also when it comes to like an advantage that came up with this hackathon, partly from being in other teams and seeing how the technologies work, even though I wasn't necessarily the one coding with them, was to collect repertoire. And I keep calling, I mentioned that with like Brian, I got to see how he identified certain plugins, APIs, Svelte, all of these things, and how we use them in a specific context. Being able to pass that on to my teammates, I think that helped significantly enough to help close the gap on what some of our options were, or at least recognize where we were at in terms of our skill level. This team was really diverse. We had folks who were everywhere from like professional developers working for groups like Frame or like major news companies, to folks who just got out of boot camp or might still be in a boot camp for coding. And then there's me, where I haven't really done any coding in a long time, other than maybe the occasional tweak to a website. So having that information and then throwing it all in a Google Doc early on, that was something that, at least from some of the communication I got back from the teammates, that was helpful. And also it helped me keep track of what's going on too. It's just a map, right? Like you're mapping out your tools. The other hack, I think you would ask me like, how do you stay up, at night or whatever? And, it's a mental trick. It's actually, I guess, the equivalent is like when I've decided I'd go running first thing in the morning, and I wasn't sure how much I could do. you set like a certain goal. This is probably kind of like a tiny habits. This guy named BJ Fogg, he probably would use something like that technique. But, I would be like, okay, I'll just set a timer for like 7 minutes, So it's a really small kind of easy goal where it's like, I'm just going to go somewhere for 7 minutes, see how long I can go. And then, maybe if I feel like it, I'll keep going. Or if I'm done with that 7 minutes, I'll just turn around and either walk back or run back. But it's such a low bar that it doesn't feel like you're putting 15, 30, 45 minutes, an hour or more into the task. So, during the hackathon, it might've been like, okay, I just need to like download this one application so that I can be functional. But, then I'm like, oh, actually I still have the next tasks where I still had, the goal of designing or working on some of the other features. But it's kind of just making it so stupid easy, that it's manageable. And at the same time, you keep kind of the North Star in place in terms of like, what is it that we're really trying to do? And I guess the last piece of advice is as far as keeping concise with your objectives, which you'll even see probably in the footage of the judgment where, the judges were like, that kind of went against us because I was kind of speaking on two terms of what the app could do versus committing to just one. But like the process of checking in with the team earlier would have probably helped had I not been driving so much to ideate and really get a feel for like, what's the essence of what we do have, in terms of, we did establish the skill sets pretty early on, but when it comes to recognizing, what is it that we've actually made? What is it that we can actually do? Even in the minutes leading up to our pitch, we were double checking to kind of get an assessment of like, what is it? What's the real status of our app? What's the ingredients that have cooked by now, and from there being able to separate between that versus kind of our trajectory, it made pitching the future opportunities a lot easier because we had that sense of this is how much we've done for sure that we can lean on and be proud of that it's like, as long as it does one simple thing, and it worked, that's pretty cool. You still built something that works and that what you're doing there and what you don't know. And that can go so far in terms of helping other people understand what your next step is, or you figuring out what you want to do next.
Very cool.
Just gonna chime in on that too.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Ian said, everything, because that communication is key. Communication on different levels, but in our case, it definitely was using the different platforms. As you said, we used the Google Meet, we used the Slack channel that we had. It was just making sure we made those connections in. That also, I agree with Ian in saying how to have it more mainstream, to have a focal point. But you have the focal point, then it'll spread back out. As how we ended up saying how we had the different resources, just connecting those particular areas that will come about when it does, because we don't know what the person needs. Each person has something unique to bring to the table. So that was really key and a good learning lesson that I can speak. And I would actually tag for some other teammates that are not here as well, because of just getting the verbiage in to get that to the next point, or understood, or even just how to put it in place to speak of. The communication was very huge, and it worked to our benefit as well. I'll speak for those two that were not here. It worked.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other podcasts that you guys would recommend to the fallen veterans audience?
It depends. I'm sort of like a grazer. I find something that's sort of interesting, and then I listen to like part of an episode or whatever else. I'll have to get back to you. Maybe I can send you a list, and I'll keep thinking in the meantime. But stuff that was useful in this case, typically what I wind up doing is I gravitate towards people who are either personalities or authors, whether they're like YouTube personalities or authors that are already interesting, or I hear them on the radio anyhow, and they have like a radio show, which then gets labeled as a podcast, right? When it comes to work-related stuff, or I'm drawing a blank, but like I know I've listened to, like, as far as like veterans, one of my favorite books is called Turn the Ship Around. It was by David Marquet, and he talks about sort of de-hierarchizing leadership. He was a submarine captain for the USS Santa Fe, and the way that the leadership structure had functioned was not really serving the needs as far as like being in touch with folks that were, like enlisted or so, but they had very critical information that he didn't have in terms of like even like what the submarine was capable of. And so that really pushed him to rethink the way that he was doing leadership and management. So I've listened to a few of his recorded episodes or podcast appearances. Another was, I think, is a couple, I think Tom Bilyeu, Impact Theory, I think, as well as his wife or partner, I forget her name, Women of Impact. Those are interesting because you hear a lot of like the other ingredients too, in terms of like what was going on in your life that led you to this, and also like how did you hack through your situation, and what are, I call wisdom like a reliable truth, right? Like you kind of get a lot of those gems of wisdom in there. So I guess I do have a couple podcasts that I can recommend. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Cool. As we're closing down here, do you guys have a favorite vet organization? And what makes it your favorite? I know you mentioned Bunker Labs. Ian, is that like top 3 for you?
I mean, it's hard to, it has a place, right? I'm not sure if I I want to. It depends on what you're ready to work with and how to use the opportunity. There was our experience at least was like there were a lot of people working through existential challenges. Like even when I said like I came in on a picturesque moment with meeting Vital, that's acknowledging that like outside of this hackathon, he has a life and he's still dealing with issues with probably whatever it is with the VA and like all these other things, right? Like and also like PTSD from combat and stuff, right? So like with Bunker Labs, their program at the time, it was there's kind of some structure, but it also kind of left a lot to whoever's in the room. And as far as like working together, definitely I can say that I'm grateful for the veterans that I met and those who are still in touch as friends today, because otherwise, I wouldn't have been here, right? That was literally how I wound up coming in and supporting other folks through that. But I guess I can offer a philosophy as far as like being able to look for where the benefits are and what their strengths are, but also recognizing the limitations of a lot of these organizations where at the end of the day, often they're limited to certain capacities of what their leadership and funding and resources can do. So I haven't really engaged enough with the rest of the veteran service organizations and ecosystem to say I can pick a favorite and that I'd recommend it for everyone. But that's the one that was my experience with Bunker Labs. Oh wait, Fallen's a pretty good one so far. I think we've been we've been having
that. Come on, just say at least this one.
Yeah,
but that's how I learned as well. I don't have a favorite just yet, but I sure can give a plug to Fallen.
Yeah, you've been doing pretty good there.
It's
for me.
The audience should know that we're not paying you guys to say this,
but it's the truth. I found out even through the Veteran Technology Program, even going back to that comes from the VA itself. I mean, everyone has their ways of describing how they like and dislike. The VA still has a lot of growth, as we know. It's how we end up coming up with our app in the making to make sure those connections get made. I know I've had some, as I was getting my own benefits still in order, they have podcasts that come every week or so, and they have a different list of actual meetings that you can also listen into. So I don't have a particular one yet, but I know for veterans listening to this who get the email or text or even from a friend, just recommend. But definitely here right now, I can just say thank you, Jamil, for the time being spent in just being a voice, not just for myself, but being for those quiet ones who don't know how or where or, give an idea to another veteran to say, hey, we're out here. We're all here together. You're not alone. And again, those hidden wounds and scars, they're there. People have those. We got them tattoos in places. They all have a meaning. And so just remember, we can still charge on one day at a time is what we do. And just keep living.
Yeah, to build on I guess positive is like I think one thing that I look out for in a lot of organizations that I find effective. I've done a lot of other work that's kind of maybe social oriented, or social, whatever, it's social work oriented or whatever else, is like who's willing to go into the cracks and still reach out or do something, right? And literally the thing that brought me to the first Fallen Hackathon, Andrew Gurman, he was saying, I was asking, well, dude, you know that I barely code or anything anymore, and why should I go into maybe a tech bro environment or whatever, you know? And he's like, well, you know, first day I'm just chilling in this VR thing, and then this dude named Jamil, who's the founder, is like, hey, what's up? You know, and starts a conversation with me, and I'm chatting with him. But then also, you know, like you're willing to kind of push out whatever resources you find interesting, and you know, try to create opportunities for other people and bring people in, which is unique, right? Like I've spoken with Senator Dave Kniezek. He was U.S. Marine Corps, but he was also he was an alumni from my university, and he was recounting this time where like the VA versus like his legislative aides were more effective at handling veteran needs than the VA sometimes, because the veterans were coming to them since they had trouble with the VA. And the thing that really like stuck in my head at the time was like, why is like someone who's like maybe at best like a political science intern, you know, college student still interning, you know, in the senator's office, why are they more effective than someone who's got like social work training at the VA? And I realized that, yeah, a lot of these organizations, what to look out for is that people are kind of stuck to, you know, adhering to the T of what they're supposed to offer. But if it goes beyond that scope, sometimes like, I'm sorry, I can't really do that. Or they, you know, they send you through some other thing that they assume is going to handle it, but no one's really looking at where those cracks are, like I said. Whereas like the intern, it's kind of a by any means necessary approach to like, okay, you know, well, we got to make sure this person's not getting evicted or whatever else. So, you know, I try to look for a little bit of that spirit, you know, if there's still some humanity and it's a little messy to it, but you know, that they're trying, as long as you have a good sense of the boundaries and what they can do, what they can't do, you know, I think that's a pretty good guideline for most organizations I've seen.
Very cool. Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming in and attending our hackathons. I appreciate it so much, and hope to see you guys in our future events. We're always trying to make them interesting with, you know, guest speakers and workshops. But yeah, feel free to pass the word, and thank you guys again.
Thank you, Jamil.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jamil. It's great. Yeah, I'm going to also make a shout out to us teammates too. We had Patrick Miraliz, who came in literally at the 12th hour, and then we had Quinn Madsen, who did a lot of the work on the WordPress end, and also Angelique. I'm sorry, I forget her last name right now. Angelique. Let me go check my.
It's
Mackie. So they were all key players to this. It's not just us. It's just we happen to be the most, you know. We're in front of the camera right now.
That diverse.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. We'll see you online.
All right. Thanks a lot.